So now that we have the chat app responding world, unfortunately, just responding worlds to everything I say isn't really that funny. Does our comedian need to be funny? Well, it needs to pass conversation because you can't be funny if you're not listening a little bit. And a comedian, before it starts talking, needs an OpenAI key as payment. You got to pay the comedian. So the nice thing about Python is that it really reads like pseudocode there, right? The joke is equal to the comedian being funny based on the past conversation. Like, come on, that's perfect. So hopefully the Firebase function ran. Oh, and look at that. It's responded. I'm feeling so much pressure to be funny. Even my jokes started to crack up. Wow, that's cool. Okay, and let's try something else. Why don't we ever tell secrets on a farm? Because the potatoes have eyes, the corn has ears, and the beanstalk. I mean, that's pretty good. This is really hard for it to be funny because I'm not really helping it at all. So yeah, so it's now limited to one sentence. It really pushes the limit of what one sentence is. All right, in this tutorial, we're going to be covering how to make an iOS chat app funny. We're going to need to use Firebase Cloud Functions, Python 3, and OpenAI GPT 4. Let's go over the end result of this chat tutorial. This tutorial is going to be an extension of the previous chat app tutorial. But in this case, we're going to start responding to the new messages from the user. These new messages will be jokes based on the past conversation. These jokes will be short format, not a page of text like ChatGPT often produces. And here you can see an example of the conversations that we're going to be able to produce. Whether or not it's funny is kind of up to the critic, but I think it's trying to be funny at least. This tutorial will be broken down into the following sections. First, we'll start with the design. We'll cover the connections, the Firebase Cloud Function, and the Python class hierarchy. We'll follow it up with the assumptions being that you have covered the past tutorial and you have set up all your billing for OpenAI and Firebase. Then we'll cover secrets, so how to store your OpenAI key in a way that you are less likely to get hacked. We'll be using Google Cloud Secret Manager. Then we'll cover the cloud function, how to respond with every message with world. And then we'll cover the OpenAI GPT Prompt, how to handle conversations, and how to respond with a long joke. Then we'll cover GPT Short Format. So we'll be generating short jokes. We'll have to modify the GPT prompt and turn GPT onto JSON object mode. And finally, we'll cover the conclusion. Let's go over the design needed to make our chat app funny. Everything that we're going to be doing today will be within a Firebase Cloud Function. But first, let's talk about what's outside of this Cloud Function that we are going to be connecting to. First, we have the message view model that we created in the past tutorial. This message view model sends new messages and receives messages using a listener from the message collection. Additionally, on the outside, we're going to be communicating with OpenAI GPT-4 API. So we're going to be sending the conversation to it, and then we're going to be looking for a response, which will hopefully be a joke. OpenAI GPT-4 API requires a secret key, and this secret key we're going to store in Cloud Secret Manager. All right, now that we've covered what's outside of the Firebase Cloud Function, let's talk about what's inside it. And to cover what's inside it, we're going to actually follow the flow of a new message. So first, the message view model will create a new message. This new message will be added to the message collection. Within our Firebase Cloud Function, we have a trigger on the message collection for onDocumentCreated. So our main.py will execute on every new message. We're going to have a check to see whether or not the message was from the user or whether it was from ourselves, from the agent itself. If the message is from the user, then we're going to be creating a new joke. So our main.py will first get the conversation from the account.py class. So the account.py class will handle everything related to the account, but it won't know anything about generating jokes. So we're going to get the conversation from the account from the messages collection. We're going to take that conversation and we're going to pass it to the comedian along with the API key for OpenAI. The comedian is going to take that conversation and pack it into a request to OpenAI's GPT-4. The response will come back and the comedian will pull out the joke from the response. This joke will then be returned to main.py, and main.py will create a new message for the account with this joke as the text. This new message will be added to the message collection, and the message listener in the iOS app will pick up the new message and add it to the view. Now, one nuance that you may notice is that we have a loop here where if we code this up incorrectly, we could execute this Firebase Cloud Function indefinitely, and that could cause a theoretical infinite cost. So it's very important that we gate execution based on who created the message so that this loop does not run away on us and our bill does not run away on us also. So that's kind of the design. Now let's move on to the next step. Before we begin this tutorial, we need to make a couple of assumptions. The first assumption is that you have completed the previous tutorial. The tutorial left us off with a chat app that we can send messages to, and these messages are then saved into a database in Cloud Firestore. If you do not wish to complete the tutorial, you can download the code from GitHub and run it yourself. Next, we're going to assume that you have an API key from OpenAI. This API key will be necessary to access the completions API and generate our jokes. Next, we'll assume that you've enabled Blaze pay-as-you-go plan for Firebase. This is necessary because Firebase Functions required a paid tier within Cloud Firebase. One thing to note is that their free tier covers most of the execution that we're going to be doing today, but I can't make any guarantees. After this, we assume that you have Firebase CLI installed. This Firebase CLI will be necessary to deploy our Cloud Firebase function. And that's it for our assumptions. Let's store our secrets using Google Cloud Secret Manager. Specifically in this case, we want to store our OpenAI API key so that it's not in our source code. And so if someone got access to our source code, they would not be able to incur billing costs on our API for OpenAI. So let's first go ahead and copy the secret key from platform.openai.com. In this case, I've changed the web page so you can't see mine. Once we've copied that, we're going to go to Google Cloud Console, so console.cloud.google.com for our project. And then within there, we're going to want to search secret. And in secret, we're going to go to secret manager. So the secret manager is going to pretty much just save this little string, and it'll allow our Cloud function to request it on each execution. And so that is, I think, the most secure way of saving this key. So within here, we're going to create the secret, and the name of our secret is going to be OpenAI key. Now it's important that you write this name carefully because your Cloud function is going to need to access it by this name. This secret value you're going to want to paste here, whatever it is, and then you're going to want to hit create secret. Excellent. So now our Cloud function can access the OpenAI key in a relatively secure way. Let's initialize our Firebase functions within our project. So first, I've navigated to the project directory in the terminal. From here, I'm going to call Firebase login. and that will log me into Firebase. In this case, I've already logged in. After I've called Firebase login, I'm going to do Firebase init functions. And what this will do is it will create a functions directory and it will set everything up for us. So here we are saying use an existing project within Firebase, and this is our chat project. For language, I'm going to specify Python. And you can see here it's writing the requirements.txt, the getignore, and the main.py for our Firebase functions. Do we want to install dependencies? Yes. And so that's going to install all the dependencies for the Firebase functions. Great, so it is initialized within this directory, our functions directory, our firebase.json. If we cd into functions, we have a main.py, and within our main.py, we have a little bit of code. So now you can use your favorite Python editor, or if you don't have one yet, I would recommend PyCharm. That's just the one that I like to use. Let's write a basic Firebase function which will respond to new messages from the user. So here I have opened up the project directory, and you can see our Firebase functions directory that was created when we initialized it. Within here we have a main.py and a requirements.txt. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go into requirements.txt. We're going to want to increase the Firebase functions version to 0.2.0, and that will be needed for some of the more advanced Firebase functions functionality that we'll be using. Next, let's go to the main.py. You can see here it's initialized with a little bit of code. I'm just going to go ahead and delete it all, and let's write this function. And so what our goal first is going to be is to be able to when the user in the app types a new message, like here, we want to respond with just world. So we're just going to respond with this short string world, just to show that we can trigger the function and create a new message. Once we've done that, we can then move on to adding actually the comedian as you saw in the design. So let's just go ahead and start on the main.py. So we're going to start with some initializers or some imports. So Firebase admin, we're going to want to import Firestore and initialize app. And then from Firebase functions dot Firestore function, we are going to want to import on document created. Actually, I'm going to do this on a new line, so it's a little nicer. So we're going to want to import on document created, and as well, we're going to want to import event and document snapshot. Cool. And then from Firebase functions, import, we want the logger. We'll be using this later just so we can debug things. And then we're going to want to do from Firebase functions, import .params, import secret param. That's how we're going to pass our OpenAI secret. And okay, that's good. And so now we're going to want to initialize the Firebase functions app. So we just call that initialize app. And then we are going to get our OpenAI key. So this is our secret API key, which will not be in our code base, which is great because code gets leaked so easy, especially when every developer has access to it. Okay, so OpenAI key, there we go. Now we're going to want to do the on document created. just gotta find the right key here. There we go. On document created. Cool. So this is a decorator on the function, and so we're going to do document equals. So this is kind of like a mask or a match for the on document created. So if you remember our structure from the previous tutorial, we have account, and then we're going to have account ID, and then we have message, and we have message ID. So this says on document created when there's a new message, pretty much. And we're going to specify the region. In my case, the closest one is US East 1, but I recommend using whatever is closest to you. And we're going to give it the secrets. So this is going to tell this decorator is going to pass the secret to the function. And the secret is the OpenAI key. Cool. So we don't need we don't need that there. New message. So we're defining the actual function now, message. And this function takes the parameter event, and we're defining the type so that it's kind of easy to work with. Cool. So there's our function here, and so this is going to get called whenever there is a new message added for any account, and it's going to tell us what the account ID is. The account ID is. So we're going to be using object-oriented here, so we're going to say account equals account, which we have yet to define. So we're creating an object based off a class, and we will pass it the parameter, which itself is a parameter of the Firebase function, and it will be the account ID. So pretty much we're creating an account object based off the class account, and we're giving that account initializer the account ID for this new message. And then next, what we're going to do is we're going to say message. So we want to get the message data. So event.data.toDict. And then we're going to say if. So this is the really important part here. So if author in message and message author. Then we're going to say account dot new. We haven't defined this class yet, so it doesn't know what we're talking about. But we're going to send world to it. So pretty much what we're saying here is we've created an account object based off the class account, passing in the account ID. Then we're going to kind of deserialize the message into a dictionary. Then we're checking if if author is in the message. So that says, just in case we coded up something wrong and a message document is created without the author, then we don't want to create a new message. And then we're saying if the message author value is true. So we're saying if this message is from the user and not this agent. And that should hopefully prevent us from creating an infinite loop of a function calling itself, and the problem with that is that it would repeatedly call itself and repeatedly incur cost on our project, and our Google bill at the end of the month might be crazy high. So it's really important that we're careful here and we make sure that we are only generating a new message when the previous message was from the author. Okay, so now that we've done that, we need to define this account. So let's make a new file here, new Python file, and we're going to call it account. And sure, we're going to add it to Git. And so here we are going to define our account. So in this account, we're going to need a couple things. So we're going to need Google Cloud Firestorm. We are going to need datetime. So from datetime, import datetime. Never makes sense why datetime is kind of repeatedly nested. Some artifact from the development of Python. Import Firestore. So we've got a couple imports here, and then we're going to define a class. So our class account. So we have our class account, and so it's going to have an initializer. And so in Python, you create an initializer with __init, and then it always takes the self, but you don't actually pass itself. And then you have the account ID, and so that's the parameter to the initializer. And so in our initializer, we're going to say self.count reference. So this is going to be a reference to the account document is equal to firestore.client.collection account.document account ID. So this is going into our Firestore database. It's going to the account collection. It's going to the account document for this user or for this account. And then, so that's the account ref. And then we're going to say self.messagesRef. So this is a reference to the collection of messages is equal to, and it's quite easily self.accountRef.collection and message. Cool. So that's pretty simple initializer. And then we're going to define a message function, not new message function. We were using it before, so it's pass itself and the text of the new message. And this is going to be super simple. It's going to be self.messagesRef. So this is the collection. Add a new message. Pretty simple. And we are going to specify the time, which is why we imported datetime, so we can do this. And the text, we need a comma. Text, which is going to be text, quite simply. And the author. Now this is super important. Remember that infinite loop situation that we could have. It's really important. We set this to false. If you set this to true, good luck with your billing account. Hope you're a multimillionaire because it's going to be expensive. So make sure this is false because we are not the user in this case. We are a robot or a comedian. Okay, cool. So we've defined account, and it's always good to make everything's PEP 8 compliant. Okay, so now if we need to import our account, so we are going to import it like this from account import account. Cool. And what's it complaining about? Oh, we want more blank lines. Okay, and this logger issue is going to be resolved. The thing is, it's using the interpreter from the project, this virtual environment, but we have yet to install Firebase Functions 2.0, so 0.2.0. So all we have to do here is we are going to cd to functions, source the virtual environment binary activate. So this is going to engage the virtual environment. And we're going to do pip install -r requirements. And that's going to install these requirements that we specified here, which is just Firebase functions. Okay, cool. And now what we want to do is we want to deploy. So we want to do Firebase deploy only functions. Okay, so what it should be doing now is deploying the Firebase functions. And once again, what our objective here is to simply send world no matter what you send. So this is like kind of like the dumb first version. And this just tests that our Firebase function is set up. And then after that, we can add the brains to it, the OpenAI and the comedian. Okay, so the terminal's satisfied. So we're going to say hello. And if it's working, it's going to say world. Perfect. So there we have a basic Firebase function, which is responding to messages. All right, so now that we have the chat app responding world, unfortunately, just responding worlds to everything I say isn't really that funny. So we're going to need to ask OpenAI for some help. And to do that, we're going to first start off with a new file in our project. And so we're going to make a file called comedian. And this comedian will be a class. And we're going to need a couple things. So from OpenAI, import OpenAI. Now, unfortunately, we don't have OpenAI installed yet, so let's go ahead and add this. So we're going to say OpenAI. And to help our interpreter, let's go ahead and install this OpenAI. So I just pressed up enter and reran the install -r or pip install -r requirements.txt. So that's going to install OpenAI. And that should help us right here. And we're also going to want JSON for this. All right, cool. Class comedian. Just realized it's kind of like, the class comedian, the one kid in class who always gets kicked out making jokes. That's what this file is. So we have an initializer. I just created the initializer, and we're going to pass the key, which is the OpenAI key that we've been talking about before. So it's pretty easy for this. So we're going to do self AI client. So we want to keep track of the AI client just in case in the future, if we want to make multiple calls in a single function, this will maintain the state of the client just in case OpenAI has some initialization time. So this OpenAI client is going to need the API key. That will be key. So when we initialize this comedian, we're going to give it the key to OpenAI to be funny. So let's add a method def be funny. So what does our comedian need to be funny? Well, it needs to pass conversation, because you can't be funny if you're not listening a little bit. The best comedians are listening to what's happening. So we are first going to define, so in this be funny method, we're going to first define this messages. And so OpenAI ChatGPT accepts a array of messages so that it can generate the prompt. So we're going to first start with our messages, and the messages are a list of dictionaries. And so our first message is actually going to be a system prompt. And so what a system prompt does is a system prompt tells OpenAI something, and it's not like at the user level. So we're really defining the framework for the chatbot to operate. And so the content of this prompt is going to be, you are a comedian. Make a short response that is funny. All right, so we're asking the ChatGPT to be a comedian and respond with something that's funny and something that's short, because often ChatGPT responses are massive. So messages dot extend. So we're going to take this messages array, and we're going to add in the past conversation. So extending this array, the array starts with just the system prompt, and then it's going to extend the past conversation. Okay, now here is the, we're going to want to actually call OpenAI. So we're going to return, and then we're going to do self dot AI client dot chat dot completions dot create. Okay, and so to create a chat completions, as you can see, there's a ton of stuff you can do. So we're going to do messages equals messages. So we're going to pass in the messages. We're going to define the model. And in this case, I'm going to be using GPT-4-1106-preview. And you can see this from the API spec, but this is kind of one of the latest ones. And we're going to define the max tokens to be 100. So we want to keep it short. And so this limits both the output size as well as it limits the overall cost, because GPT bills based on tokens. And so that's going to return, it's kind of a complex structure, but we're going to pretty much say, okay, it returns a bunch of choices. And we're going to pick the first choice because we didn't ask it to make more than one. And we're going to go into the message and we're going to go into the content. And pretty much that just pulls out the string. Okay, so this is the comedian. So the comedian is kind of ready to be funny. And as long as we have the past conversation. So let's go ahead and add in this past conversation functionality to the account. So let's go to the account and say define a get conversation. So we're going to get the conversation for the account, and we're going to want the conversation from both the user and the agent to be able to create like a kind of cohesive conversation. And so we're going to define the max messages. So this is how many messages we will go back at a maximum, and we're going to define that to be 5. So at most, we're gonna use the past 5 messages. If you want to increase that, you can, but just consider that that also increases your GPT cost. So by doing 5, it kind of limits it, and it also prevents it from really getting lost and down weird tangents. It only really cares about the most recent stuff. So from that, we're gonna do stream. So this is gonna be the stream of messages. Is equal to self dot message ref dot order. So we're going to order the message collection by, and we're going to use time. And the nice thing about Firebase is it's actually just going to handle the types and everything. So that's really handy. And then we're going to specify the direction, and that's going to be firestore dot query. Firestore query dot descending. Okay. Oh, it's actually all caps. Descending. Okay, cool. And so that's going to return the stream, but we are going to want to limit it. So we're going to do limit, and that's going to be on our max messages. So limit is max messages. Oh, max messages. Okay, cool. And we're going to stream that. So you can see it's quite a long line, and that's kind of the case often when you do queries. But generally what it's doing is it's just getting the most recent 5 messages. That's kind of really what it's doing at the end of the day. Okay. And so we're going to do ordered documents. And so we want to take this stream and turn it into a list of ordered documents. And so this is another kind of monster of a line, but dictionary to dictionary for doc in reversed. So we're going to reverse this list that we've just retrieved. And we have, because this stream is actually a generator. So we need to turn it into a list because we're about to reverse it. So this unpacks the generator into a list, and then it reverses it, and then it turns them all into dictionaries. So it's a bit of a mouthful, but it's kind of necessary to get the data in the format that we want. All right, so all that was so that we can create some messages. So for document in order documents, so now that we have the documents in the right order and unpacked and everything, we can say messages. And we're actually going to be using the format that ChatGPT accepts for these messages. So we're going to say role. And so the role of these messages, ChatGPT has system, user, and assistant. So the role is going to be user if document at author. Otherwise, let's go with assistant. So the difference between assistant and system is that assistant is what the ChatGPT or the assistant has responded. So the model has responded, but system is us, is like the developer specifying rules for the assistant to operate within. And then, but it doesn't always follow them. And so we'll find that out soon. So content, so the content of this message is document text. Okay, cool. So that's going to create our message array, and we're going to return messages. Perfect. So this is going to get the conversation from Firebase for this account, assuming we did everything right here. So now that account has this new method, let's connect everything together in the main.py. So first what we're going to need is we're going to need to import the comedian from comedian. Oh, oops, this needs to be capital C. Okay. Oh, oops. Classic. Comedian import comedian. All right, there we go. So now that we have the comedian, let's tell it what's happening. So we've imported the comedian, but we need to make a comedian. So we're making a comedian here, and a comedian, before it starts talking, needs an OpenAI key as payment. You got to pay the comedian. And then we have the conversation. So the past conversation, we need to grab it for the account. So we're going to do account.get conversation. And that's just that easy to get the conversation. And then we're going to use the logger. And so this logger is going to log. It's important to log when you're working with these like kind of chatbots in the cloud, because often you'll find that you're not getting the output that you're looking for. And so you kind of have to debug the conversation. So here we're just printing the conversation. Perfect. Okay, and then we're going to generate the joke. Okay, so the joke is equal to the comedian.befunny, and we are going to pass the conversation. So the nice thing about Python is that it really reads like pseudocode there, right? The joke is equal to the comedian being funny based on the past conversation. Like, come on, that's perfect. And then logger.log, and then we're going to log the joke. So we're going to say joke, joke, and then we're going to say joke. So that will print the joke for us. And then, yeah, instead of world, we're going to be passing the joke. So that's that. So assuming we did everything right, what we should be able to do is redeploy our function, and we should get a joke as a response. So let's deploy the functions. Okay, so the deploy is complete. Let's see if the app is funny. Are you funny yet? So hopefully the Firebase function ran. Oh, and look at that. It's responded. I'm feeling so much pressure to be funny. Even my jokes started to crack up. Wow, that's cool. Okay, and let's try something else. I'm feeling so much pressure to be funny. Even my jokes started to crack up. What is your best joke? Why don't we ever tell secrets on a farm? Because the potatoes have eyes, the corn has ears, and the beanstalk. I mean, that's pretty good. Cool. Okay, so we've created a chatbot that's kind of funny. Now, one thing is that the response length when you're just running basic GPT can be extremely long. So I'm going to try to incite it to be longer. So I'm going to say, I am working on a tutorial for how to connect an iOS app to a chat agent. Today I covered Firebase Functions. Let's see how it responds to that. Good choice. Here's a tip. If your app starts gossiping with Siri, you might want to double check those Firebase functions. Otherwise, you'll end up with the hottest chat in the App Store, literally. I kind of see how that's funny. Remember, the only thing that you should be flaming is your user's passion for your app, not the app itself. Keep it cool and connected, you'll be all set. So yeah, so one thing is that it kind of responds really large. And so we can actually make that shorter and force it to respond in a more concise way. All right, let's use GPT's latest feature, JSON mode, to make the messages shorter and force it to produce just a single sentence for each joke. So because we structured our code in a way that all the comedian holds all the GPT content, the only file we need to change is the comedian.py. And so within here, we are going to change the prompt. So instead of saying you're a comedian, make a short response that is funny. So we're going to say you're a comedian, make the conversation funny. Your output, and so this is the kind of the big difference, is your output must be JSON. So instead of outputting a string, we're going to output JSON. And then we're going to say must be a JSON object with the key. I just want to make sure that the space was added. Okay, with the key sentence and the value of a single sentence. Cool. So we're telling GPT a JSON format, which will be a JSON object with the key sentence and the value a single sentence. All right, cool. And then, yeah, we just leave everything else the same except for the completions.create. We're going to add a new parameter, which is response format. And our response format is going to be of type JSON object. Nice. So this will tell GPT that when it's creating this completion, instead of returning a string, we're going to return a JSON object. And now, because this whole thing is now a JSON object, we need to parse it. So JSON.loads. So loads JSON from a string, load S, which is string, load string. And then within this JSON object, we're going to go for the sentence within it. So some might say, what if GPT doesn't return the correct structure? But it's okay, because what the comedian will do is it will just fail. And so this invocation of the function will fail. We'll get an error in the function error logs that we can look at if our user reports it. But the system will just continue working as pretty much normal. So it's all right if this, if GPT doesn't return the correct structure, it'll just not print anything. So there we go. We've changed it to be hopefully more concise. So let's go ahead and deploy this. Okay, so we have deployed the Firebase function, which will hopefully limit the agent to respond with just a sentence and not this lengthy response that is kind of difficult for people to read all the way through. So let's see if it works. So we can say, what would we gossip about with Siri? Probably about Alexa and Google Assistant accidentally starting a podcast in someone's living room. Turns out it was just a heated debate over smart light bulb colors. There we go. Okay, so it's now kind of limited to a single sentence. What colors? Let's see. This is really hard for it to be funny because I'm not really helping it at all. Alexa insisted on tranquil teal, but Google Assistant was all about sassy scarlet. Turns out even AIs can't escape a classic living room color clash. So yeah, so it's now limited to one sentence. It really pushes the limit of what one sentence is, but it's now constrained because we used a Firebase, or sorry, because we used GPT JSON object mode, and we forced it to be a single sentence based on the schema defined here. So that's one way you can kind of force GPT to respond the way you want, is you can use the JSON object mode. Today we made our iOS chat app somewhat funny. To do this, we first started with a design. Then we covered the assumptions necessary to complete this project. We then went over how to store secrets in Google Cloud. Then we covered how to create a basic Firebase function that just responded with world. After that, we figured out how to prompt OpenAI's GPT so that it responded with jokes. And then finally, we covered how to use the JSON object functionality in GPT to enforce a schema and force GPT to respond with a single sentence. I hope you build an app with this that helps thousands of people. If you want to try my free app, APZ8, you can find a link in the description. APZ8 is like a journal that asks you questions. At the end of the day, it celebrates your accomplishments with AI art. Thank you and have a great day.